All right, good morning, everybody. It is Monday, May 18th, and we are starting the topic of evolution this morning. And evolution is a pretty large topic to cover within 2 weeks, 2 videos, all right? So they're going to be a little bit longer, but there's a lot that you need to know, all right? So speaking of that, I'm just going to show you the standards for evolution real quick, just so we can be knowledgeable of our end goals. All right. So, number one, all right, communicate scientific information that common ancestry and biological evolution are supported by multiple lines of empirical evidence, including molecular, anatomical, and developmental similarities inherited from a common ancestor, homologies, even seen through fossils and laboratory and field observations. All right. So we actually pretty much covered this when we, in the beginning of the year, when we talked about biodiversity, which is the difference of life, all right? And we did talk about shared characteristics, and we compared things like a bat wing to a bird's wing, and they both have the same function, giving that animal flight, but they look different. But that's a homology real there. So we pretty much covered that one. So we'll give you a little bit of a refresher on that. Second standard is construct an explanation based on evidence that Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection occurs in the population when the following conditions are met. All right, so these are Darwin's a big name for evolution, and these are his rules. All right, so if these conditions are met, then evolution can occur. All right, first condition: more offspring are produced than can be supported by the environment. So there's almost like too many people, right? That creates what we call competition, right? Or too many organisms in the same environment, right? Second condition, there is heritable variation among the individuals. So heritable, meaning that they are multi-generations passing down traits, and variation just means that everyone doesn't look the same, right? And the third condition, some of the variations lead to differential fitness among individuals, as some individuals are better able to compete for limited resources than others. All right, so we're going to talk a lot about competition and, well, who wins the competition? And the answer is whoever is more fit. All right, evolutionarily, you can be more fit for survival. One species can be more fit for survival than another. All right, so let's just go on through the standards still. All right, HSLS 4, research and communicate information about key features of viruses and bacteria to explain their ability to adapt and reproduce in a wide variety of environments. And so bacteria and viruses are fast organisms, and when you think about biological evolution, when you're looking at humans, our lifetimes are very, very long, almost 75 years between each lifespan in each generation. And to take data and kind of crunch the numbers, looking at humans, that takes a very long time to collect that data versus viruses and bacteria. They exponentially reproduce. They're so fast, and they're very good model organisms to run tests with and apply the concepts that you learn looking at prokaryotic viruses and bacteria, kind of their faster life cycles, and apply that knowledge to bigger models like humans. All right. Just the last standard reads, HSLS 4.5, evaluate models that demonstrate how changes in an environment may result in the evolution of a population of a given species, the emergence of new species over generations, or the extinction of other species due to processes of genetic drift, gene flow, mutation, and natural selection. All right, so those are all the standards, all right? And so we're really going to focus on standards 1 and 2, all right? So we're going to be talking a lot about natural selection and kind of how the environment can switch things. All right, so I want to bring you to this quick example. All right, and so we have two organisms. All right, and this is in an environment. This is like a petri dish. All right, this is going to just kind of simulate how two organisms starting off pretty much the same are going to end up being different. All right, so notice the colors. All right, and I'm going to press run on this, and so we can just see how it. All right, so we have a blue and a white. All right, and so as you see new blocks kind of start to come out from this area, each different color is a new species showing different phenotypes. But what's cool about that is that you're getting all of these different colors here when you just started off with a gray block, all right? And so this program I'm using right now is called Avita Ed, and it's a free program that you can manipulate and run a lot of empirical or data tests. And it's kind of cool. So I'm going to find a good place to pause, all right? Let me just wait for a new color to pop up, hopefully soon. Come on. Well, anyways, there it is. All right. So for a second, we had a pink here. It went away really fast, and that's actually wicked important, right? And so that was more just for a visual and such. Starting with two gray, similar original species, all right, or ancestors. This petri dish or this environment has propagated and had a lot of different species come out of it. So in total, you have these dark gray, dark blue, kind of royal blue, yellow, kind of more like a tan. All of these are representing different species, and all of them came from the same original two. All right, and so what evolution and natural selection likes to get at is how that happens, right? And so the first person that asked that question is Charles Darwin, right? This is a 12-slide presentation, and I'm really going to try to be quick, right? Sorry. So Charles Darwin was the first gentleman to kind of like look into natural selection and such, right? Sorry, I should have disabled the sound effects, but what we're going to focus on real quick is what caused Darwin to reject his medical education at the University of Edinburgh, all right? Charles Darwin, like every other famous person, was just a Joe Schmo before they got famous, all right? So they had to quit their old life and then start pursuing what made them so recognized and so well known, all right? What a naturist studies, all right? We're going to talk about the Galapagos Islands a little bit. One of the first areas kind of evaluated for evolutionary discoveries, right? What's the primary mission of the HMS Beagle, which is kind of where Darwin started viewing his Galapagos birds. What is the difference between artificial and natural selection? Ding, 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 ding. All right, that's a huge point. All right, and what two potent forces cause evolutionary response? All right, we'll get into that. All right, so I just want to make sure. Okay, cool. So a new way of thinking about life. All right, so Charles Darwin was born in a wealthy family. His father was a doctor who strongly encouraged him to be a medical doctor. All right, and yes, Charles Darwin is different than Gregor Mendel. We're not talking about Gregor Mendel anymore. All right. However, Charles Darwin was not interested in that line of work. He was interested in nature. All right. So nature is just his surroundings. All right. He led him to reject his medical education. All right. He pursued his career as a naturalist. A naturalist is a scientist who studies animals and plants. All right. So if you go outside into a field and sit down with a book and just kind of note down very good descriptive language of your surroundings, you would be considered a naturalist. You know, right around me, I have a bunch of different trees and different types of vegetation and birds, and a naturalist would record everything that is going on around them. And through time, if that same area has a bunch of descriptions throughout time, that's almost as good as data, right? And that's how Darwin started a lot of his theories and such. All right, so on this Beagle, which is the ship that he was on, I was going to call it a boat, but it's more of a big ship. Charles Darwin had an opportunity of a lifetime to open his eyes to see the world, and so he got on the HMS Beagle, and they were going to survey the coast of South America. So this is when they're still trying to draw accurate maps and such. And they had to have ships and boats out there just to pretty much map out the world still. And so that was what the HMS Beagle wanted to do. All right. While Charles Darwin boarded the Beagle, the average person believed that he was about 6,000 years old, and almost everyone, including Darwin, believed that animals. Sorry, not that Darwin was 6,000 years old. The world was about 6,000 years old, which was wrong. All right. And Darwin was opening people's eyes to that with his discoveries and such. And people did believe that plants and animals, as they saw it during their lifetime, were all that it was and how it always will be. The chipmunks and squirrels of their time were the chipmunks and squirrels during the Jurassic period. And we know that's not true, but that's because we grew up with advanced science. All right. So here's the good part. The Galapagos. All right. In 1835, which is 4 years later, the HMS Beagle arrived in the Galapagos Islands off the coast of South America. And Darwin was initially disappointed by the barrenness of these volcanic islands. But what he's going to later find out is that it being so barren and so sparse, it actually provided almost like a fresh slate of an environment for these birds to go through a process that we're going to call speciation, which is new species coming from a common ancestor. Right? He began to draw and collect mockingbirds, finches, and other animals in these islands. Darwin bagged and tagged, so he recorded most of these animals as they were sent to England, where a man named John Gould, and he could not classify specimens as separate specimens. And so a lot of what he was looking at was their beaks. Their facial structures were so different that they could not possibly be the same species, right? So Darwin reconsidered his observations and began to suspect that populations from South America, the mainland, they changed after reaching the Galapagos. And so this is what geographic isolation is starting to come into play. So if you have squirrels in America and you have squirrels in Asia, all right, those squirrels are going to be related to each other, but because they live in different environments by far, they're going to change a little bit, all right? And that's what he was seeing with these finches and such, all right? And so we're going to go into something that's pretty much going to explain the phrase survival of the fittest, right? And so natural selection, all right, big important time, all right? So Darwin understood that the new species could appear gradually through small changes in past ancestral species, so that's the common ancestors, but he did not know how this process actually worked. Therefore, he turned to a pigeon breeder where it all came together. He saw how breeders could artificially select specific traits by having the most exaggerated expressions of those traits, similar to dog breeders, all right? And so we all know of different breeds of dogs. You have Great Danes, you've got Black Labs, Golden Retrievers, and such. And through artificial selection, which means not what happens naturally, you can select for certain traits. And so all of your smaller dogs, like terriers and chihuahuas and such, dogs are supposed to be the size of a wolf, guys. Like that is the common ancestor from Canis domesticus to like the rest of the world. And so we, through artificial selection, pretty much started with a common ancestor resembling things like a wolf, and we selected artificially to get all the way to a chihuahua from that. All right, so that's some pretty big genetic differences between a wolf and a chihuahua. But through time, all right, and that's what evolution does. A lot of time is needed for these changes to happen. All right, and this process of selective breeding is called artificial selection. Yep, and then number 11. He now thought if humans could change species by artificial selection, then perhaps the same could work in nature. And so nature selection, natural selection, here we are, all right? And so, number 12, Darwin reasoned that some competitors in the struggle for existence would be better equipped for survival than others. Those less equipped would die, all right? Darwin recognized the brutality of nature and its power, all right? And so this is that survival of the fittest, all right? So if you're in a struggle for food, all right, say it's two lions, two male lions, no prides, it's just the two lions. One lion is 5 years old, mature and pretty strong, and one lion is 2 years old, very juvenile and still growing, right? Who's going to win that fight? Obviously, the older 5-year-old strong lion is going to beat him in that competition for food, all right? And so in that moment, that 2-year-old young lion isn't the most fit, but as far as the lifespan goes, who has more time to affect the world, all right? And that lifespan of a lion, maybe it's like 12 years, all right? And so that youngin has a little bit of time, more time compared to the other one. And so there's different angles that you can take on a situation and pretty much classify who is more fit, all right? Very broad topic, and I don't really want to confuse anybody by going too far into it, but depending on the lens, which means how you're looking at it, two organisms in a situation can be compared, and one can be considered to be more fit, therefore more likely to survive when you're looking at that situation. But there are many different ways to look at things, all right? That's enough. All right, so number 13, all right? Therefore, the connection was made, and natural selection could be summed up called survival of the fittest. Fittest does not mean the strongest, but the most adaptable to change, all right? So again, it doesn't necessarily mean the strongest, but it means that in the situation being looked at, whether you're the most stealthy, that could make you the most fit if you're trying to be discreet. You know, you don't want to be a little field mouse and have, like, you know, these big hard steps when you're walking through like dried leaves and stuff, because that's just going to alert you to all pretty much signal where you are to all your predators. And that is not a evolutionarily fit characteristic. And that's why you don't hear mice when they pitter patter across the floor. All right. For example, animals that live in an environment with little food will compete for that food. All right. And we knew that. And yeah, just through competition, people are just going to become very differentiated as far as fitness goes, and the survival of the fittest. If you are the pride of lions that has successfully gotten a kill, has fed everybody, and is satiated, you're just versus the pride downwind who didn't get any kills or anything like that. One pride is definitely set ahead of the other one as far as who's more successful, right? Number 14, Charles Darwin developed his theory of natural selection, which explains how a population of species could be modified to suit the current environment and produce new species. The result of this process is evolution by natural selection, right? Natural selection and evolution go hand in hand. It's peanut butter and jelly, all right? You'll never hear one without the other, all right? Darwin's theory of evolution led to the world-changing book called The Origin of Species, all right? And so this was his pretty much raw writings when he was writing in that journal as a naturist, right? So that's the end of the slideshow, right? And I feel like this video is probably reaching a couple minutes. All right, so in general, all right, natural selection is the survival of the fittest, all right? And sometimes the species don't have a conscious effort to making these changes, and sometimes they do. Take giraffes, for example, all right? Giraffes have a very long neck. We know that now, but their neck was not always that long. And so, you got to think back like a million years, because a million years is probably like the minimum amount of time for change to be noticeable, for a new species to diverge, all right? And so a million years ago, ancestors to giraffes probably looked a lot like horses do. And horses, they have a long neck, longer neck, but definitely not as long as a giraffe's. And through environmental pressures, all right, it became more beneficial to have a longer neck for giraffes. And so we can reason that with droughts, all right? So in a drought, there's going to be a lot less leaves and vegetation on the ground level for giraffes, or the ancestors of giraffes, to consume. And so all of the good vegetation that the giraffe needed to reach was all up in the trees. And so through a million years' time and multiple generations, all right, heredity is huge in evolution. If you can't genetically pass on the change that one individual made, doesn't matter, right? You could be the most fit for your generation, but if you do not reproduce or you do not pass on that trait to anything after you, it doesn't matter. So heredity is huge, right? And through time, those ancestral giraffes, all right, they just wanted to keep on getting a longer and longer and longer and longer neck. And because the environmental pressure was selecting for a longer neck, and the ancestor to the giraffe are reproducing while trying to elongate their neck through a million years estimated time, they got a long neck. And then now giraffes are what they are today, which are extremely long necks. All right. All right. So this is the lecture video. Hopefully just rewatch it a little bit and just kind of internalize some things. Again, evolution and natural selection are huge, huge concepts, and they do a really good job of bringing all other concepts learned in biology together, because now we're looking at a big timeline of the world, and all of the organisms that inhabit it fall differently on that timeline. And you're really trying to spot where changes happened. All right. So just take down a brief amount of notes and really focus on the things that Darwin said. Go through that PowerPoint. I'm going to share it with this video. And yeah, this is week 1 of evolution. Next week will also be on evolution, and hopefully I can clarify some things as questions come up. All right, thanks guys. All right, keep up with the work. Thank you.